Inter-religious harmony week. And according to this principle, practically speaking, we have been actually, through the guidance of His Excellency Director General Abdulaziz Othman Al-Tuwaijri, developing some cooperations with secular institutions. Remind you that I am a European citizen, and in the secular framework of European institutions, we found a way in these last 15 years with President Prodi, and then Pottering, and then Barroso, and then with Frattini, Amato, and now with Timmermans, to try to engage as a Council of European religious leaders to engage with secular orientations of policies, but implement and respect the values of religious communities in the West. And it was very interesting because every year there was a different meeting. Sometimes when there was the financial crisis, it was on the values of ethics in economy towards the financial crisis. On the other side, it was migrants. So the humanitarian values in the engagement for the migration issues. And recently it was on peace, harmony, security, towards the misleading abuse of religion by the terrorists. So these are concrete actions and meetings and dialogues through religious leaders of Europe, of all religious identities, and the top European commissioners or Parliament or Council of Europe representatives. And one of these actions was also to engage religious leaders for peace, also in prevention of radicalism. And at the European level, we worked with OSCE, with NATO, trying to help also these key institutions to have the knowledge of what is the truth of a religious identity, doctrine, and practice, and what is the abuse of a religion in terms of terrorism. So not to confuse criminals with believers, citizens of different faiths and religions with criminals. And this is very important because, as it was mentioned, I would say only 3 concrete points were done. With ISESCO, it was the training of imams in Europe, but once again, it's not only preachers. It's the implementation of a new, if I may say so, leadership. We need preachers that have knowledge of doctrine, but we need managers that have the knowledge on how to live and teach religion in the secular, modern, Western context, which is a very important challenge. It's a question of tradition and modernity, not tradition against modernity. And the other one was, of course, culture. We need to have speakers and knowledge, the wise Muslim Europeans that can be able to witness the in-depth of Islamic civilization in world history, world culture, world art. And so if this is clear, the criminal use of Islam or of any kind of culture or religion has nothing to do with the deepness and the identity of our spiritual tradition. On the other side, we had to face what was mentioned before, Islamophobia. There is an increasing tendency by some politicians and some citizens and some associations to discriminate Muslims as citizens, as believers, to create double standards, not to respect their rights, and to confuse all Muslims because there are thousands of criminals that are abusing of Islam. So in order to avoid these misperceptions and these confusions, we need to create and to train a new leadership with these skills. And this is the responsibility of Muslims of Europe. Finally, dialogue. I have to be very clear here. I come from a country like Italy, where dialogue is probably much more developed. Of course, we think of dialogue especially as an interreligious dimension. So, of course, we are engaged mostly with the dialogue as European Muslims with the Christian Catholic Church, but also with other Christian denominations, as well as with the Jews or any other confessional identity. The only thing is, this dialogue is very important because it avoids us to have a monologue. And a monologue is when a person is selfish and speaks and thinks and believes only according to his own nafs, according to his own personality. And he does not confront and share and engage with the other. And this is the secret and the value of dialogue. As the Prophet ﷺ has always mentioned and taught us, as all human beings with an open-minded attitude normally engage one with the other. So this is actually, so it's a dialogue that decreases the selfish attitude, and it's an exchange of experiences, goods, and knowledge. But we have to be very clear. In the dialogue cannot be an emotional feeling or something that is vague and has no concrete dimension. We need a dialogue between skilled and wise persons, and to distinguish between interreligious dialogue and intercultural dialogue, and then share both these dialogues to create global citizenship and to create the respect of diversities of believers in all different faiths and in all different cultures. And this will create a more peaceful society, because we link interreligious and intercultural dialogue without confusing a culture with a religion. And on the other side, we link intra-religious dialogue with intra-cultural dialogue, which is much more difficult, because within our own family, it's much easier to have disagreements, but while sometimes in different families you find a gentleman's agreement. But in order to develop a successful dialogue, we have to distinguish these frameworks and then link them one with the other, intra with inter religious and cultural dialogue. And in this sense, of course, one of the most interesting examples for me was the كلمة, the Common Word initiative, because it started as an intra-religious debate by Muslim scholars from Sunni and Shia, from all regions of the world, trying to engage according to the commandment of love of God and love of our neighbor, and engaging at the second step the Christian Catholic scholars and theologians and leaders. And as you know, we were eventually received by Pope Benedict XVI and recently by Pope Francis as the forum for Catholic and Muslim dialogue. But the important thing is that the commandment of love for God and love for the neighbor is a shared principle and a concrete example, because this helps theologians, but this helps also citizens. And so in order to develop this, my personal suggestion due to this experience was actually really to go back to education, but to go back with the knowledge of the challenges we are facing in contemporary society. And in order to be successful in dialogue for peace as shared values, we need to really be trained in these skills. We need to know what are the complexities of tradition and modernity, of West and East, of citizenship and culture, on religion and politics, without confusing one field with the other, but trying to link in a harmonious way these fields in order to help our brothers and sisters in our religion and in other religions to share a truly global citizenship in a peaceful world. Thank you very much.